From wherever you are around the world, we welcome you and thank you for joining us. Today we're going to be exploring the border. That's right, we have a former Border Patrol agent with us, Zohra Azzizi. She's also an expert in deception and interrogation with the Pelt Group. In our next episode, part 2, which you don't want to miss, she's going to talk to us a little bit about deception and interrogation. But today we're going to focus on the border, so let's welcome to the circle, Zohra. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you were a former Border Patrol agent.
I was.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you did there?
Well, the Border Patrol, before I joined, was something I didn't really know a lot about, and I feel the audience doesn't as well. I thought it was just, you stand on the border and you wait for somebody to jump across and then you arrest them.
It's not like that.
No, not at all.
Oh.
There's many parts of the Border Patrol. There is that standing and waiting for someone to jump across, but there's also drugs, there's interrogations that they do, they work on the ocean, there's the Marine unit, there's so many aspects to the Border Patrol. It reminds me a lot of the military, actually. There's many jobs.
You were former military as well, correct?
I was former military.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
What branch were you in?
I was in the Army.
Army, okay. So on the Border Patrol, now we have California. It extends over to other states as well. It goes as far as Texas, I think. It ends right there.
It does, but it also goes to the East Coast as well. So there's, the Canadian border. And
of course.
So.
Yeah. And now, let's look at this. So you said it hits the Marine. What happens out there in the ocean?
Well, there's just a lot of drugs coming through, as well as illegal immigrants coming through the ocean nowadays.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's not, they're using jet skis and pongas and...
Jet skis?
Jet skis, correct.
Wow. Now, are they acting like a tourist, or do they have like a bag that has the drugs hanging out? I mean,
well, there's many ways that they try. I mean, we've had bags that are tied to the jet skis, backpacks as well, and they have just boats full of drugs as well. So, I mean, it's just different methods. And yeah, sometimes they act like tourists, wearing the whole outfit, or, I've seen them come across with horses and pretending they're, on a horseback ride or something.
Horseback ride.
I mean, they get very creative.
Any stories that you can think of in the top of your head that you went, oh my gosh, I can't believe this one?
Well, when I used to work interdiction for a few years, I've had a lot of stories, and I used to work drug and felony interdiction, and a lot of fun stories of coming across, and as far as their itinerary making no sense, and finding drugs later in the vehicle or whatever, they had it on them, on person, or in the vehicle. It's pretty hilarious.
Anyone that really tricked you, or were you involved in anything where you thought, not in a million years would I peg this person to be trying to smuggle drugs over the border?
I would say 2 females. One was about 7 months pregnant, and she was 18 years old, and it was...
So exploiting you.
Yeah, very much. And it was her sister with her, and she was about 22, I believe. So, I mean, nobody's going to pull over a pregnant female and her sister, but... their behavior gave it away.
Let me ask you this question, because it's another question. I was actually writing it down. Do you think they were coerced into doing it? Is it very common to coerce citizens of that country, maybe hold their family hostage or something if you don't take this over? Is that something that's common, do you know?
I don't see that as I don't think they're coerced, but it is easy money. If somebody's looking for money, especially in down Mexico, there aren't very many jobs, and they don't pay very well. It's very easy money. They make it seem very Hollywood, the way that they're told.
Smugglers?
Yeah, the smugglers tell them. I mean, they don't care about who's smuggling the drugs. Obviously, the cartel doesn't care, so they just make it very Hollywood. They give them very little money for little gain, and so they're disposable.
A lot of repercussions, poor things. I don't know if we can even tackle this, but we'll try. Did you ever meet a coyote?
I have.
Actually, let's define coyote first before they think of meeting Wile E. Coyote or something. What is a coyote?
Coyote is like a smuggler. Usually we prefer the coyotes or foot guides who are very knowledgeable about the area that they're working, and they get people across, and that's their job. Just get them across to a destination, and then come back to Mexico and just do it. That's their only job.
And you met some, you said, what do you think is going on through their head? I mean, are these businessmen that say, is that all there is? And everybody, life is just expendable to them? And what do you think is going on there?
I do believe life is expendable to them, because you will have children that come across, and they're coming across in, sewers, and it's wet and rainy, and, you have a 2-year-old or an infant and soaked, and parents with them, and it's just they don't care. It's just getting them across. And then if they get caught, of course they're the first ones to run, and they know their way, so a lot of times they don't get caught. The coyote themselves do not get caught, and everybody else, the group,
so they take off pretty fast.
They take off. They know the area, so they can, they know who works where and how to get back into Mexico without getting arrested.
One of the big things that I like to do on this show, besides educating and bringing awareness, is also try to eliminate some of the hyperbole that we see on the media.
Okay.
So one question I have for you, and this is the dark side of the, how would you say, the crossing the border illegally. What do you what happens? Is it really true that they come over and some of these people are just left by the coyotes, and all of a sudden they're lost in this desert? They don't know where to go. You've got these incredible temperatures out there, so they end up dying, I've heard, out there in the desert sometimes because they have no food, no water. The coyote's long gone for whatever reason. Maybe he's caught. Maybe he's got the money. He doesn't need to do anything anymore. Are their stories true?
Those stories are true, but with technology these days, the Border Patrol do find these people that are left behind, especially because we put out sensors throughout the area. They work the area, and as sad as it may be, some do end up getting lost, and some do end up dying in those harsh weathers, but we do our best, because we know this is happening, to make sure, we can save whoever we can when they are left behind.
What about sexual abuse or human trafficking? Was that present as well?
Unfortunately, it's still present.
Yeah. Is it pretty predominant, or is it like you think it's 10% of the time? Or?
I honestly can't say, because a lot of people do not come forward as far as like being sexually abused. It's just something I think that they mentally prepare themselves to just forget if it happens. They're just happy they're across, and a lot of times they don't want to. I think maybe it's culturally that they don't really want to say what's happened.
What is the average age of the person that's coming through that border?
Honestly, it's all over. I can't say it's like you won't necessarily get a lot of older people, because it's hard to make it across. It is. You might get older people in vehicles through the port or something, but you're going to get younger crowd. You're going to get children.
Under 30 then, pretty much?
Under 30. Definitely.
Are there any other cultures besides Mexicans coming from Mexico? Are we seeing people jumping from Central America through Mexico?
Yes, there are a lot of different cultures. That's another, thing that's probably not known so much with the Border Patrol. They arrest Indians, Arab, Saudi Arabian, from India, from Pakistan, Canadians, Chinese, you name it. Yeah, wow. It's just everybody comes across. Mexico is fairly easy to cross. And they get from whatever country they're crossing from, get to Mexico. They have just elaborate itineraries before they make it to Mexico, and then they get helped across. There's Afghans, Iranians.
That's another question we'll be touching upon in a little bit to find out. A lot of people are concerned that we have terrorists coming over here, or other people are trying to do us harm. But before I get to that, you said Chinese. We've talked about Indians. Do these use more sophisticated methods to come over, since they might have more money, they're more affluent? Do they try to use more con games than just trying to cross the border?
Unfortunately, no. They just they go the route that they know best. They go and put themselves in the hands of the smuggler, and it's up to the smuggler to get them across.
Okay. And let's go right to the terrorists then. So, what do you think is the likelihood of terrorists coming over through that border? Is that true? Is that something just made up to scare the heck out of us?
Unfortunately, it's not something that is made up. If we're having people crossing, and let's say we're catching about 85% of the people crossing. I've had interactions with Iranians who've crossed. I've had interactions with Afghans who've crossed, having a very elaborate itinerary before they get to Mexico. And, like I said, if we're catching about 85-90% of the people, I don't know who has crossed, who's, here. If there are people of different, countries coming across, then of course there's a high alert and concern. That is the main goal of the Border Patrol, is to prevent terrorist activities.
When you were on the Border Patrol, did you ever see anything like that?
I have,
Okay.
but I don't.
Sure.
Yeah,
You
I
can't
don't
share
believe
it.
we can share that, but yes, I
That's
have.
about all you're going to get, folks. Well, it might be time for a fastball question. We'll find out here. Fastball question. Did you ever have anybody crossing from here to Mexico illegally?
Yes.
Really?
I have. I've had actually felons trying to cross into Mexico who are wanted in the U.S.
And is it up to us to catch them, or is it the Mexico side trying to kick them back out? Or
Unfortunately, it's up to us. I mean, if Mexico doesn't get them, because, it's first, like, walking into Mexico, there isn't much of a inspection. Yeah. But a lot of times, the Border Patrol or the customs agents will do southbound checks. And luckily, we catch
that's usually
people.
Coordinated with the police departments. And if they have somebody
it's
coming
coordinated
down.
with, well, not necessarily. I have myself worked southbound operations, and we've had, money going south. We've had, large bulk cash over $10,000, or, pirated DVDs, or, felons trying to escape here and make a life in Mexico.
Are the Minutemen good or bad for you guys?
Not necessarily here in Southern California, especially San Diego or Imperial Beach. We don't see a lot of them, but it's always great to have citizens helping because, like I said, there aren't a lot of Border Patrol agents, and getting assistance from the public is, wonderful. Having people call us and tell us, hey, we see some activity here. We can't see everything, so of course, we'd love to have more people help out.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for doing the work you did do out there. We're going to now start focusing more on the work you do now.
Hi, welcome to Adelante. This is Adelante Recovery, and my name is Yvette Kuglin, and I'm part of the staff.
Adelante Recovery Center has helped people in dual diagnosis for 5 years. We accept most PPO insurances and provide luxury accommodations and 24-hour support. To speak with an admissions counselor, call 1-888-242-4450.
A lot of time we don't even know what's wrong with us, and sometimes we need to get away to figure that out. So if you want to go for a little retreat out in Corona Del Mar, which is a confidential location, we're here to help. So we're only a phone call away. Thank you.
This is an interesting topic. We hear a lot about it nowadays. Certain agencies and their governments are getting fried right now because of interrogation tactics. But before we get to those, let's talk about deception for a little while. That's interesting. Can you really see if somebody's lying?
Honestly, I would say yes. I think a lot of people can tell when someone's lying. It's just if you choose to believe it.
Like a woman's intuition?
Women's intuition, of course. Men have it too, but they ignore it.
Yeah. Is there anything, what are some of the things you look for? I know you told me before we're looking for baseline first, and then we look for anything out of the ordinary. Is there some things you're looking for?
Yes. Well, I think in any deception, you have to make the person comfortable so they don't feel like they're being interrogated or they're being questioned. So you would have to first make them comfortable.
Do you chit-chat about their life?
I do. I ask them
really?
questions and get them comfortable. And then after that, I ask them certain questions to see their reaction.
Do they get suspicious, obviously, or apprehensive when they start saying,
They do.
what is Zohra asking me this for?
They do. they'll give away certain gestures, language change.
Language change. What do you mean by that? Now, is that like a pronoun shift, or is that a verb shift, or a distance? What's a language change?
A lot of times, if somebody is bilingual, I will have someone speaking to me in English, and as soon as I ask them anything out of what they're comfortable with, they'll speak to their native language. It could be Spanish or Farsi or Dari or whatever it is, and they'll switch it over and answer it, however they want. Like, no, of course not, or, whatever they say. But you'll notice that they change to what they're comfortable with.
Do you know, you use this technique, I know I've heard of distancing language, or instead of saying, this is my mug, they'll say, that's my mug. You guys use that at all?
Well, I haven't used that before, but I've heard it before. It depends. Like, everybody has different techniques, and what works for them.
Do you try to put them back into the situation of the crime scene to see how much they're familiar with? In other words, if they committed a crime and you ask them, were you there? Are you looking for some kind of weird response like, I wasn't there that day?
Yes.
I've been there before.
Yes,
like
I have done that, but I try to ask open-ended questions as well. And a lot of times I'll ask a series of the same question, maybe different times, to see if I get a different response or a different reaction. Or if you're asking drug-related questions, as far as if they have drugs on them, I'll ask them a series of drugs. I'll ask them, hey, do you have marijuana? They'll say no. Or cocaine, no. But you say heroin, their no could be exaggerated, or like it could be like, of course I don't. Do I look like a drug dealer? So, I mean, it could change the response.
And that's a defense mechanism there, isn't it? Do I look like a drug dealer to you?
Or I hear the honestly, or trust me, I promise.
What are those? What do you call qualifiers, or
yes.
qualifiers? Yes. Yeah. Interesting. I gotta watch what I'm saying out here. Anything in regards to body language? I mean, obviously, if you say, are you a drug dealer? They go like this. No, I'm not. We can kind of figure that one out. But anything that stands out to you?
I've had from extremes, different extremes. I've had people who pace or try to pick up things, fidget, and they'll do different gestures, a lot of times touching face. I had someone whose mouth just went dry and his braces broke because he was so nervous.
His braces broke?
His braces broke off.
Wow.
I mean, he was so nervous. He could just dry mouth really bad. But yeah, just different techniques. I've had completely someone who is just so very, very aggressive towards me, to someone who's just extremely respectful, yes ma'am, the opposites, everything.
Does drugs influence them, or do you guys wait for them to come out of that to clean up, or do you still interrogate them even when they're inebriated or anything like that?
No, you cannot, because they're
can't?
not. No, you cannot.
Interesting.
You're not allowed to, because you ask those questions if they're under the influence of any type of drug or alcohol, and if they are, you're not allowed to.
So you have to bring them back to a sober mind?
Yes.
What happens if you can't bring them back to a sober mind?
Might hold them for a while.
Might hold them for a while. Excellent. Anything else that pops up in your head in regards to deception that you can think of that you guys use, or you're allowed to say?
If we're allowed to say. I just believe everybody can use deception and techniques for deception. They just have to really look. They have to know the person they're talking to.
Are men and women different when they lie?
Yes. Women are much better.
Much better liars, or detecting of liars, or both?
Women are better liars.
Really?
Yes.
Well, now, why do you think that is?
They've been lying for a very long time. They lie. I mean, a lot of times women use a lot of white lies all the time, with their friends and everything else. That outfit looks great, regardless if it's great or not. They do. They're just better liars.
Do you think they rationalize it in their head?
They do.
Okay.
They do.
Interesting. Very fascinating. Now, you're being a female. Do you think that changed the dynamics between you interrogating a man and a woman? Did the woman become more defensive? Did the man find you, maybe he found you attractive, so maybe he was more, how would you say, not reluctant, but the other word, more open to tell you a story, to make himself look better? Did you ever see any of that?
I've seen both. I've seen men who refuse to talk to me because I'm a woman, and I've seen women who feel more comfortable talking to me because I'm a woman. A lot of times it could be both. Like I said, you have to know who you're talking to and what works for them. And sometimes I use the sex card against them because they don't want to talk to me because I'm a woman. So, you know, they feel uncomfortable, so I'll just be in the room to make them uncomfortable for a little bit before, you know, somebody else goes in and talks to them like a male.
That reminds me. So does that really happen, the good cop, bad cop thing?
That's a technique, yes.
You didn't hear that.
It is a technique, yes.
Interesting. Okay. And I know in the movies a lot of times you'll see them doing that, but we'll get aside from that. But so do you guys switch it too in regards to that? Like you just said you stay in the room, but maybe do you set up, you go in there, does the first agent go in there male, they're comfortable with the male, you get the baseline and they switch you to go in? That might change the dynamic, though, wouldn't it? If you go in there, now they're just, not aggravated, but irritated that you're there because you're a female. Mm-hmm. Does that kind of distort the ability to be able to see if they're lying or not?
I think that from the beginning your encounter, you find out what they're comfortable with as far as your interview techniques, and everything is recorded from the beginning. So there's not a lot of switching because, you know, it's not really... So you can't really do that nowadays, you know, everything's recorded, so we don't switch around very often. If we do, we talk from the beginning. If I'm in there, it's because I've already analyzed the situation and felt that I should be in there or I should be talking to them or, you know, whatever would help get what we're looking for.
I know interrogation, deception, we talked about this before the show. You said they really go hand in hand. So let's say Carlos here commits a crime. You want to figure it out. Mm-hmm. What do you do to prep for that interrogation?
Very detailed of the crime, very detailed of the person. You would want to know everything, especially about the person. But then again, everything that you know, you don't want to say, because if you go into any interrogation, you don't want to just point fingers. Like, you did this, look at the evidence. Because if you're going into an interrogation and you already have the evidence, why even talk?
Interesting. Now, is it true that you guys try to say the least you can so they can say it themselves? Or do you want to, you know what I mean? You said the least amount of information that you have so they can kind of spill their beans? Or spill my beans, I guess, in this case.
In that case, well, yes, at some point, you just... interrogations is, like I said, each audience, each person is very different. So you need to work with that person.
And do you, we see this on shows too, do you ever lie to them?
Yes.
Oh, we have, okay. So you do tell them you have evidence and maybe you don't have evidence. And
Yes, you do lie to them.
How do you get around that legally? Is that okay then?
I
mean, I'm not trying to help the criminal here. But...
Well, you don't. I mean, you're not saying, oh my gosh, I have this, I have so much evidence. You might have some evidence, or as far as, like, sometimes you work people against them.
Okay.
If there's two people, you might say, hey, this person told me this.
Oh, the prisoner's dilemma trick, huh?
Yes.
Well, excellent. Anything else you want to tell us about interrogation? Any interesting stories or anecdotes that you had, encounters, interrogating, deception, anything that said, wow, what happened here? Or...
I've had a really good interrogation interview before where it was a female, she wouldn't budge, and it just hit her in her heart. We figured out her problem, what would work for her, and ended up with $15.2 million at the end of it.
15.2?
I did.
And what, drugs or?
Cash. U.S.
Wow.
Currency.
Good job, guys. Once again, thank you so much, Zohra, for being on the show. Thank you for your service and for everything you do.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that show as much as I did. Remember, it's not easy to deceive. And once again, our motto is simple. Wherever there's psychology involved, we are there. We'll see you next time, everyone.